So, sir, how are you today?
I'm doing good.
Good, good. Can you? We're at the famous totem pole landmark here on Route 66, and just wanted to kind of get an education, if I could. I appreciate your time. And you're the caretaker of the totem
We
pole.
volunteer to just kind of keep the
Okay.
doors open. Yeah.
All righty. And what's your name, sir?
David Anderson. My wife is Patsy, and she helps too with the inside of the totem pole. I'll tell you a little bit about it.
Please.
This fella, name is Ed Galloway. He was born in the late 1800s and had a career in the military. And he ended up, well, he was discovered by a fellow who wanted to take. This was in Missouri, and he wanted him to go and represent Missouri at the World's Fair in 1915. He's a carver. You'll see his really love was woodworking, and you'll see some of that inside. But just a few days before he was to go, the place where he had done all his woodworking, I think he'd had 200 some odd objects they burnt down. So he did go ahead and go, but he didn't take near as many objects as he had created. Later on, he was identified as a possible teacher for kids. This was in a kind of a it's really a home for mostly unwed mothers. This would have been after World War I, and a lot of single-parent mothers. And he taught the boys to do woodworking primarily, building things out of wood.
The children.
The children.
Gotcha. Okay.
And you'll see some examples, some really big chairs, hefty oak chairs, and they're one of the things that he taught them to build. So he did that. He retired after 1937 and moved out in 1935 and moved out here. And he's evidently a workaholic. He just started building some of these, the big totem pole you see here, he started building that in 1935. And he completed that in 1948, and that's the sign here. He built that at about 10 feet a year. The inside of that are big rocks like you see around some of the posts and fences. And then he pasted concrete on the outside. There are about 200 objects, and they're actually formed into the wet concrete. They're not painted on necessarily, they're formed in. They're about 200. I've never counted them, but I'll take their word for that. And they represent some kind of Native American culture or art.
Did he keep kind of scaffolding up and building up, or did he build it and kind of set it on top with a crane or something like that?
No, he didn't have a crane. In fact, he didn't have a lot of resources at all. He went down here to a creek and dug his sand up, and people would just donate things to him occasionally, but most of this he just did with very little resources. In fact, one of the things, we have a lot of kids come through here, children, you know, in grade school, and one of the things I stress to them is, here is a man, he built this for probably centuries, you know, I think it'll be here a long time as well as it's built. And he did this with almost no resources, you know, very few resources.
Pretty ingenious and pretty amazing, huh?
Pretty amazing. He said one time in an interview, he said, I wanted people to know that there were people here before us, meaning the white people come in from Europeans. And he did that. As far as we know, he was not a Native American, but he really respected and liked the Native American culture.
Did they ever kind of acknowledge him for doing something like this,
you know,
and honor him in any way?
Not back then. Okay. He died in 1962, and you know, I don't know that for sure. I know this was kind of a famous thing back then as well. After he died, this place just kind of went to ruin. The house, he built this house. This is the first thing he built here, and the roofs had caved in. It's just kind of run. And a group from Kansas come down and began to restore this in the 1990s. And we have just completed restoring the top part of this, and that's been a 2-year project. And this thing is supposed to be 90 feet high. He wanted to build it. It's at that time, supposedly from what he knew, it was the tallest totem pole in the world. It's not any longer, but it is probably the largest totem pole in the world. It's a huge thing, and so he really wanted to, at that time, that's why that pole is on top. He was trying to get to that 90-foot level. I don't know that it's 90 foot, but it's close. Anyway.
Did he have to file any special permits or anything like that because of the height within any township or anything like that?
No, we don't do permits around here.
That makes sense. Right.
This is rural Oklahoma. He built later on, he built some of these things. The last thing he built was this tree structure right here. That kind of has an interesting story. His wife was quite a card, and she would tease him. There's a poem by Joyce Kilmer that says I should never see a poem as lovely as a tree, for poems are made like fools like thee, but only God can make a tree. You've probably heard that poem. Well, she told him that, and he come out here and made a tree just to show her that he could make a tree.
That's great.
So the inside, this is kind of made after a Hogan structure. His wife got tired of him showing his woodworking in the house, and so she had him made this structure. You'll see his woodworking inside. He carved over 300 fiddles, primarily to demonstrate different kinds of wood.
Okay.
And some of his boys that he taught were later on in World War II and were all over the world, and they would ship pieces of wood back to him, and he would carve a fiddle. They're not playable fiddles. They demonstrate, and there's a key there that shows you the different kinds of wood. So you'll see that inside. A lot of his best art was stolen after he died, but we still have about 100 of his fiddles left. So have a lot of visitors here. We'll have over 10,000 a year sign the book, and we're just open half of the time. A lot of people from Europe and actually all over the world come through here. I was really amazed at that when we became the caretaker.
The pavilion back here, is that as part of the facility? If a family wanted to come and barbecue
facility
back here or something, or have a picnic, they can come back here.
There's also a nature trail back at the back.
Okay,
so,
very nice.
Yeah,
well, I certainly appreciate your time and the education you've given us.
Well, we
Thank you so
appreciate what
much.
you're doing. I was impressed by your